Welcome to this week's Bible Topics discussion. We're glad you're with us today. Today's episode is about wolves in sheep's clothing. What exactly does wolves in sheep's clothing mean? There are several warnings given by Jesus himself and some of his disciples about this subject. So let's examine some verses and dive into the study.
Let's start with Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20, where Jesus is speaking. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will recognize them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. Jesus also spoke in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, telling his disciples to, "Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves."
Yes. Jesus is telling us to be aware of false prophets and that we will recognize them by their fruits. In my study, I have found that Jesus was describing those who led people along the wide path of destruction as false prophets. The sheep talked about in these verses are followers of Jesus. These verses emphasize the importance of judging people's character and actions, which is their fruits, rather than focusing on their outward appearances or claims. Fruit can include their words, their actions, their influence on others, and the overall impact of their lives.
Right. Let's look at a few more verses in Acts chapter 20, verses 29 and 30. Paul is speaking to the Ephesian elders here and says, "I know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among the flock, and from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things to draw away the disciples after them." So Paul is warning the elders to be on guard because the men from their own selves, meaning those they associate with or know well, will speak things to try to turn the flock or the disciples within that church away from Jesus' teachings. Let's look at John chapter 10, verses 11 and 12. Here Jesus is speaking. "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them."
Jesus contrasts the good shepherd, Jesus, who lays down his life for the sheep, with hired hands who abandon their flock when danger comes. So Jesus shows genuine love for his followers in contrast with selfish behavior of hired hands who only care about their own safety and gain. After we've looked at all these verses, who can be the wolves among the sheep? It could be an individual coming into a church and prophesying, a teacher, a small group leader, or even a pastor. We as sheep are to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves as we look at a person's fruit. There are many ways Christians can be fruitful. True fruitfulness begins in the heart with the fruit of the Spirit. That inner fruit affects outward actions. Our words and our activities will glorify the Lord, and God's will is accomplished. God's desire is to transform us into the image of Christ and make us as fruitful as He was. In our allegiance to Him, we want to be characterized by good works, humility, and forgiveness. We want to always be ready to give an account for the hope that is within us. We desire to be the good soil Jesus spoke of in the parable of the sower. The result of spiritual fruitfulness is that God is glorified, we grow, and others come to know Christ.
Don't forget to watch out for that hired hand who is only interested in the sheep so long as he benefits. When serving the sheep means personal risk, he abandons them. This describes those who purposefully take advantage of others using spiritual deception. But it also applies to those who passively take advantage, claiming spiritual authority or privilege without the service and sacrifice that position entails.
Well, that's it for this week. Please like, comment, and share. If you have questions or suggestions for future topics, please let us know. As sheep, we are called to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves as we watch for the fruitfulness of others around us. Be aware of the wolves in sheep's clothing. See you next week. Be blessed.